I didn't expect this, but at least she had the decency to confess to me and not cheat behind her back until I caught her. I really didn't know what to say. Was I angry? Yes. Was I confused? Yes. Was I going to try to stop her? Never. George, I'm not being unreasonable. See a lawyer if you think it's necessary. The only thing I ask is that you continue to pay for your kids' college education. Other than that, I don't need anything other than my clothes and jewelry. I just sat there, holding the divorce petition in my hands. I didn't open it or even look at it. What was the point? Linda had already moved her things out of the house without me even noticing. I didn't say anything, but she insisted on talking non-stop. She did this when she was nervous. She tried her best to appear calm and in control, but the constant stream of words pouring out of her mouth gave her away. I stared at the papers and smiled to myself. I think she noticed this and spoke faster. As I stood up, I tossed the envelope onto the coffee table. Just get out. I got a message. Goodbye. At least she shut up. She stuttered a little as I walked into the kitchen to get a cold beer. Instead of finishing what she was about to say, my wife turned and walked out the door for the last time. 10 minutes later, as I was finishing my second bottle, I glanced at the bag she had left. According to her, everything was simple and neat. She also included a power of attorney so that I could sell the house. We just took out a second loan to pay for college for our two sons, Robert and Glenn. If I sold the house now, I wouldn't even have enough money to pay the realtor's commission. So what was it that ended a 20-year marriage? Long-time passion. Cameron Wright was her first. Linda and Cameron had been a stable couple for years before I met her. She's mentioned him often in the past, and several of our mutual friends have spoken out about him over the years. I ignored it. He was her old boyfriend. So what? Now I know it was something more. I must have been sitting for quite some time because I noticed that the room was starting to get dark. I knocked over 3 empty bottles as I reached over to turn on the desk lamp. Then the doorbell rang. Damn it. And who else is there? I was talking to myself. George. I just found out what she did. Billy said I should come by and see if you're okay. It was Linda's sister, Grace. I've always liked Grace. In fact, I liked her better than Linda. I must have drunk too much and wasn't thinking straight. Billy was my best friend. I should get my ass kicked for even thinking that way about his wife. I shook my head as if there was water in my ears in a futile attempt to get my logical senses in order. Grace took my hand and led me to the kitchen. I was a little reluctant because she seemed to treat me like I was disabled. I didn't need any damn help. The fluorescent lighting made my eyes hurt, but I just squinted. How much beer did I drink? I drank about half the coffee before I realized Grace wasn't saying anything. Are you feeling better now, George? Can we talk now? Give me a minute. I need to take a leak. By the time I returned, she had already filled the cup. So, Grace, tell me about my loving wife and Cameron Wright. When did all this happen? Your stupid son-in-law only found out about this afternoon. Don't be too hard on yourself, George. I always thought she was still into that asshole even after you guys got married. It would have been great if you had said something 20 years ago. Be realistic. There was no way I was going to poke my nose into this. I just hoped that over the years she would forget about him. You two seemed to get along so well. Grace, it was never as good as it seemed. I now realize that most of the time our relationship was more platonic than romantic. I tried and tried all these years, but I could never really warm her up. Flowers, sweets, and decorations never helped. We got along, and that's it. In fact, we rarely quarreled. I think now I understand why. You hid it pretty well. Thank you. Can I grab some oatmeal cookies from the box behind you? My stomach is crying out for something. So tell me, sister-in-law, what prompted my wife to leave me. I don't know if you remember, but Cameron dropped out of high school and joined the Air Force. Right after that, you and Linda started dating. Cameron was Linda's first, if you know what I mean. I nodded and shrugged at the same time. A girl never forgets her first love. Either way, she was very angry when he left. She wanted a family and children. I think you were the one she chose to help her with this. I thought she made the right choice. I had no idea she was just using you until the asshole came back. Hell, I don't think she even knew he was coming back. So why did he come back now? He served 20 years in the Air Force and retired with the rank of major. Linda claims that he has a good pension and several good management positions in the district to start his second career. She told me about this, and there was real pride in her voice. She admired his magnificent military career as if she was part of it herself. Honestly, George, that sounded a little unhealthy. So, I guess she's living with him now. He is renting an apartment in Berkshire Heights until he can find a suitable house to buy in the area. Linda has now completely moved in with him. How long ago did he return? I'm not sure, but I think about 3 weeks. He called her as soon as he arrived in town. So that stupid George has been a cuckold for so long? Looks like it. Sorry. Grace tried to refill my coffee cup, but I motioned her away. I don't need coffee anymore. All I want now is to take a shower and get a good night's sleep. Thanks for stopping by, Grace. Lock the door when you leave. My sister-in-law actually looked sad when I left the room. I was glad the boys were no longer at home. I would be embarrassed to explain to them what happened. They would find out sooner or later, but I hoped that by then I would have regained my composure and wouldn't look so pathetic. My career choice was not that ambitious, but I liked my job. I was in charge of the produce department at one of the major supermarkets in the area. The company had been trying to get me to be a manager for the past 10 years, but I didn't want the long hours and a lot of responsibility. Now it didn't matter anymore. Early the next morning, I called my district manager and informed him that I was now ready to move. That same day, I was assigned to head a new store about 15 kilometers from home. I spent 3 days interning in Baltimore and then started my job. In my spare time, I notified the boys of my marital status, put the house on the market, and transferred all my credit cards and bank accounts. Linda's car was in her name, but the insurance was under my policy. The emphasis is on the word was. Launching a new store took me a lot of time. I didn't mind because it took my mind off my personal problems. Everything in the company was pretty orderly, so most of the difficulties I encountered were easily resolved. The corporation invited several professional employees who were opening stores to stay with us for the first 2 weeks. This was a great help. They provided training to most of the store's new employees. Half of the employees were experienced and transferred from other stores in the area. I was happy with the job and my ability to do it. In the blink of an eye, everything settled down. Everything was under control and went smoothly, so I had time to attend to my personal affairs. Since I planned to rent a small apartment near the store, I started getting rid of everything in the house that I would no longer need. Most of it I just gave away. There were several agencies in the area that were willing to take almost anything I was willing to part with. Of course, the first thing I did was get rid of the marital bed. I got great satisfaction from getting rid of wedding and family photos. I do have a small collection of photographs of boys. Billy called and insisted that I come to his house the following Sunday for a cooking class. He promised me that Linda wouldn't be there. He also wanted to fill me in on the status of Cameron Wright, a local war hero. It wasn't much of a cooking class. 2 teenage daughters, Billy and Grace, appeared but quickly disappeared. Basically, it was just an opportunity for Billy and I to chat. Grace spent most of the day feeding us cold beer and cleaning up after whatever Billy cooked. Okay, Billy, what do you know about Mr., or should I say Major, right? All I know, George, is what he's spreading at the Veterans of Foreign Wars Hall. Cameron and Linda came over a couple of times a week. He is all Tribune and Gladiator. The guys seem to get it, but I think they're just impressed because it's new blood. Heck, most of the guys who come there are over 60. And what does my loving wife do when he speaks loudly? Linda usually just stands next to him and smiles. She looks proud to be with him. She never did this when we were together. Damn it, George. You are not a great war hero. Billy couldn't help but laugh when he said it, but I didn't find it funny. George. He wears a baseball cap with the Major's insignia embroidered on the front. He even has a tag on the front of the car with that golden oak leaf on it. He does his best to impress everyone that he was a high-ranking officer. Something seemed wrong to me about Major Wright. I finished my beer just as Grace appeared with a couple of fresh bottles. Billy, Cameron didn't even graduate from high school. How did he become an officer? If I remember correctly, they canceled that old Mustang program years ago. To obtain an officer rank these days, you need to have an academic degree. How did this son of a bitch get a college education when he didn't even have the brains to get a high school diploma? Good question. I have no answer. Did he really join the Veterans Club? Yes. He joined the first week after returning. Can you get a copy of his application for membership? No problem. Why did you ask? I just want to check something. I'll bring it to you next week. Well, around this time Grace came out and asked us to change the conversation so she could be included. I don't remember what we ended up talking about, but a few hours later I went home with a sly smile on my face. The next week everything started fine. The paperwork for the divorce has begun. I had 3 serious people look at the house, and the realtor was optimistic. Everything at work went smoothly until Thursday. When I arrived, Maria Sanchez was waiting for me in my office. Maria Sanchez was my procurement team supervisor from midnight to 8. Maria was promoted and transferred to a new store on the other side of town. All I knew about her was that she was a hard worker. Everyone agreed that she deserved a promotion and a raise. If I lost Maria, I would have a small problem that I wouldn't want to deal with. Getting people to work the night shift is difficult, and finding good ones was almost impossible. I hope you're not here to complain about anything, Mrs. Sanchez. She smiled, but seemed a little nervous. I'm not really complaining, Mr. Templeton, but I need help. Continue. I'll do everything I can. I have 2 sons, 15 and 16 years old. They both work part-time after school. They need to catch the school bus at 7 a.m., but they are having a hard time making it. Sometimes when I come home after 8, they are still in bed. They are not lazy, just tired. I need to run them in the morning, if you know what I mean. Do you want a salary increase so they don't have to work? No, not at all. They work to earn money for their studies. They're both doing well at school, but I have to get them there. What do you expect from me? Help. I found it interesting that she didn't whine. She was a serious woman who led a close-knit team, but she had problems with her own children. I laughed a little at the situation and was rewarded with a sharp response. This is not funny, Mr. Templeton. If you can't figure out how to help me, I'll just have to find another job. It's funny, Mrs. Sanchez. You're leading a group of people at night who would take any chance to get out if they could. They don't do it because they work for you, and you wouldn't put up with that. How come you let 2 little boys take advantage of you? Where is their father when all this is happening? Now I've really pissed her off. She began to stand up with fire in her eyes. For a second, I was afraid that I might have lost her. You are arrogant, Mr. Templeton. Everyone said that you are smart and fair. Looks like they were wrong. I didn't come here to be insulted. Calm down and sit down. I have a possible solution. She sat down again, but didn't look too happy about it. I'm going to change your work shift. You will start at 11. This will give you time to prepare supplies for the night crew when they arrive at 12. You will work until 6 when the first of the day shift supervisors arrives. He will be on duty at the end of your shift. You'll have plenty of time to get home, take your boys to school, and maybe even make them breakfast. That's good, except for one small problem. I need a minimum of 38 scheduled hours to keep my health insurance. I can't afford to lose my insurance. She was right, but I wasn't done yet. Do you go to church, Mrs. Sanchez? Damn it. Here you go again. You really know how to piss someone off. What the hell do my church habits have to do with my job? You certainly have a temper, Mrs. Sanchez. I would appreciate it if you could calm down a bit until I finish. And stop calling me Mrs. Sanchez. I'm single. I believe you have a witty remark about this too. I was starting to get annoyed with this woman. I sighed, leaned back in my chair, and immediately fell backwards. For a moment, I just stared at the ceiling. I was amazed at how cheap the lights looked. I heard her giggle as she looked over my desk. I lay on my back like a little frog, and she quietly laughed at me. She brought her hand to her mouth to hide her smile. Sorry. I was embarrassed by my clumsiness, but she was amused. It was difficult for me to pull myself together when I stood up. If I can't call you Mrs. Sanchez, what should I call you? Maria. Just Maria. Maria. I have 2 leaders, both Southern Baptists. Neither of them will be open on Sunday mornings, so I'll have to find someone eventually. I want you to work from 6 to noon on Sunday. This will give you extra hours, but it doesn't matter anyway. It's important for me. You pay extra for health insurance under a family plan. This is true. Yes. For $80 a month, both my boys are covered too. Maria, I'm going to give you a raise. This means your boys will automatically be covered under your insurance. This also means that you will receive another small increase in your salary. And that also means I won't be entitled to overtime. This is right? Yes. She didn't say anything for a few moments. She was an amazing woman. Her hair was dark, but not quite black. However, her eyes were jet black. There didn't seem to be an ounce of fat on her. In fact, she looked a little gaunt. I was trying to determine what type of figure she was hiding under her work clothes when she answered. Fine. I agree, but I don't know anything about being a supervisor during the day. I've never had to work with clients. Do not worry about it. I'll work the first 4 shifts with you. There's no way you can ruin everything. This is how my relationship with Maria Sanchez began. It was stressful to say the least, and at that moment I never thought it would become serious. I expected her to stay for 6 hours on Sunday morning, but we ended up working until late in the evening. She insisted on knowing everything for which she would be responsible. With nothing else to do, I enjoyed her company. There was a short article in the Sunday paper about a fundraiser at the local American Legion. Major Cameron Wright took a photo in full uniform next to my loving wife. I can honestly say that I have never seen her as proud as she is in this photo. You'd think she deserved those damn medals herself. I didn't speak to Billy until Monday evening. Grace called me at work and insisted I come over for spaghetti. How could I refuse? Billy had a copy of Cameron's application to join the Veterans Club, as well as a copy of his discharge papers. I told him about the photo in the Sunday paper, and he promised to also get me forms from the American Legion post office. Grace overheard at the beauty salon that Cameron had applied for membership at the Liberty Keys Country Club. Linda and I tried to join once, but we were turned down. I didn't care, but Linda was crushed. Grace said it appeared Cameron's announcement had been largely approved in advance. It was a leisurely week. I had already found a small apartment and usually went there straight after work and drank at least 3 bottles of beer, sometimes more. Cable TV was included in the rental price, so I wasn't completely bored. Next week, I will have an internet connection via DSL. The week ended on a high note when I found on my desk an invitation to dinner with Maria and her 2 sons. I already had her address and phone number, but she gave it to me anyway. I felt awkward, and this could very easily be interpreted as a violation of the company's relationship policy. Just in case, I called my boss in Baltimore and explained this to him. Having his blessing made me feel much better about the whole situation. I bought a bottle of wine to take with me, but had no idea what to bring for the boys. I was a little nervous about meeting Maria's sons, but after they learned that I have 2 sons who are already in college, the evening became much more pleasant. Poor Maria found herself left out of most conversations. I tried several times to engage her, but in the end she made a face at me, as if to tell me not to worry about it. She seemed pleased that I got along with Armand and Martin. The evening ended too quickly, and we never had time to open the wine. I spent about 2 hours with Maria that Sunday as she started her first real shift as a supervisor. I got the feeling that she couldn't wait to see me leave so she could fly on her own. This was a good sign for me. She promised to call me if she had any problems. She also asked me to come over for dinner that evening. Armand and Martin mysteriously disappeared after dinner, leaving Maria and I alone. I helped her wash up after dinner, and we were finally able to open that bottle of wine. The conversation was awkward at first. With the exception of dinner on Friday, everything between Maria and I was strictly professional. She looked a little dejected when I explained to her that our relationship might cause problems, but quickly mentioned that she was sure it was a small thing that would not be difficult for me to resolve. Although I did not bring up the topic, Maria must have felt the need to explain her marital status. She lived with the boy's father in Tucson, and one day he simply disappeared. She lived there for 3 years, but he never returned. Her brother worked as a bricklayer in the Philadelphia area and convinced her to move in with him and his family. She eventually got her own place and has been working to improve the boys' lives ever since. She has never been married. As soon as I finished my story of marital grief, the bottle of wine was empty. Even though the topics of conversation were disgusting, I still enjoyed my time with Maria. We spread out the evening over several hours, so drinking wine wasn't an issue when it was time for me to go home. For a few days, everything was pretty normal, both at work and in my personal life. One evening, Billy came to me with information from the American Legion Post. We drank a couple of beers and tried to figure out what to do now that we had all the backstory. A few bottles of beer were too much, and Grace ended up coming to pick up her drunken husband. The next morning, I was late for work, but no one complained because I was the boss and I usually arrived early. Friday morning brought another unexpected surprise. 3 vice presidents of the company came. They took a cursory stroll through the store, but it all seemed a little fake. Everything became much clearer when we broke for lunch. Apparently, there was a severe shortage of managers in supermarkets, or so it seemed to me. Before dinner was over, I was offered the position of regional supervisor, responsible for 6 stores within a 50-kilometer radius. The salary and benefits associated with this position were more than I could have ever imagined. Of course, I agreed. My assistant at the store was also pleasantly surprised when I handed over all the work to him. I left him with one request: don't mess with Maria. He winked at me and I smiled, showing that we were on the same page. Maria, naturally, was unhappy to see me leaving the store, but she was pleased that I received a promotion. I invited her to a delicious dinner, which I think could be called our first real date. The boys were delighted that we spent the evening together. It was also the first time I saw her dressed and tidy. She was amazing. She seemed to take my promotion a little better when I told her I would still be working and living in the immediate area. On the other hand, she was not pleased to hear that I had to go to Baltimore for 2 weeks of training. On Sunday, I had lunch with Billy and Grace. We celebrated my good fortune, and I tried my best not to drink. I planned to take a short trip to Maryland that evening to be fresh for my first day of training. Billy wanted to know what I planned to do with Cameron and Linda. I told him it would have to wait until I was finished and settled into my new position. Maria and I talked on the phone every day, sometimes twice. I felt like a teenager. She asked me about all the training, and I made her tell me what happened in the store. I always asked her about boys. She seemed to appreciate the fact that I showed interest in them. My new job came with a lot of responsibilities that I didn't expect. Involvement in the community was important. I was expected to join as many civic and community organizations as possible, including the local country club. I smiled when I was told that my position in the company guaranteed me recognition almost everywhere I turned. Life was good. The first weekend I went home and saw Maria twice. I got my first kiss, but felt a little awkward since I was technically still married. She hesitantly asked me about the kiss and laughed a little at my explanation. She teased me a little, and I think she liked it. I know I liked it. The company rented a small office in one of the local business complexes and fully furnished it, including a secretary. They've done this before, and it showed. I was ready to start full-time work on the first day. On my desk was, among other things, my application for full membership at the Liberty Keys Country Club. All I had to do was sign it and pick up my membership card. I decided that would be the first thing. I was wearing a new suit and driving my new company car. Everything was wonderful. I strutted into the club lobby until I saw Linda. She was standing with several other ladies, wearing a cute little tennis suit. I didn't even know she played tennis. Suddenly, the pain and humiliation of what she had done to me came back. I lost my swagger and confidence just by seeing her. Unnoticed, I tried to walk past the group. Everything was working fine until I heard one of the ladies ask, "Isn't that your husband who just came in?" I didn't turn around. There was a quiet murmur as I handed the clerk my form. He disappeared into the back room while I stood there waiting for something unpleasant to happen. I knew this would happen. It would have been nice to have a witty barb ready, but my mind was blank. "George, what are you doing here? This is for members only, you know. You're not going to try to join again, are you?" I really wanted to embarrass her in front of her new friends, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. "Hello, Linda. You look good. Nice outfit. He's new. I didn't know you played tennis." I was babbling something. I wanted to be smart and witty, but it just wasn't there. The string of stupid statements was a good indicator of how nervous I was. That in itself was awkward. "I'm taking lessons, George. I always wanted to play tennis, but we could never afford it." All I could do was smile. "You really shouldn't be here, George. I am very uncomfortable. It's members only, you know." I was still smiling when the clerk returned to the counter. "Here you go, Mr. Templeton. Your membership card, locker key, and a copy of the club rules. Welcome to the Liberty Keys Country Club, sir." I silently nodded to him as a sign of thank you and turned to leave. Linda stood there with a confused expression on her face. I grinned and said nothing more as I walked back through the club lobby. As I walked out the door, I wanted to turn around to see what she was doing, but I fought the urge. I smiled the whole way back to the office. That evening, I took Maria to dinner at Red Lobster. I had no intention of gloating, but I took great pleasure in telling her about my meeting with Linda earlier. There was no wine with dinner because my guest had to be at work by 11. We laughed a little about this situation. Maria promised to join me at the club for a late lunch on Sunday after her shift ended. I found myself hoping that we would run into Cameron and Linda. The rest of the week until Friday went smoothly. Helen, my new secretary, who by now knew about my marital problems, smiled when I entered the office. There was a local newspaper on my desk, and on the front page was a photo of Cameron right in handcuffs being put into a plain black car. Cameron didn't realize that American Legion leaders screened their candidates to make sure no undeserving veterans snuck in. He did retire from the Air Force, but as a technical sergeant rather than a major. The fact that he wore medals that were never given to him must have caused him even more grief. They called it stolen valor, and they didn't take it lightly. I had a strange feeling that Cameron Wright would quickly lose face in his hometown. Helen brought me a cup of coffee and told me it was okay to smile. This made her smile. About an hour later, the realtor called me and told me that the house had been sold. Closing was scheduled in 2 weeks. Just when I thought things couldn't get any better, my final divorce papers arrived in the mail. Good old Cameron pulled some strings with some of his new friends and got the paperwork done quicker than usual. I didn't think they were friends anymore. The day and week were coming to an end. Billy came to see my new office, but what he really wanted to tell me was that Linda had moved in with him and Grace. He wasn't home yet, so the only information he had was what he got on the phone when Grace called him. He wasn't thrilled with his new guest, but he was delighted with what had happened. Billy offered me no resistance when I took him to the local corner bar to celebrate while I treated him. I called Maria at home before she left for work and told her the good news. I think she was as elated as I was. Billy came and got me out of bed on Saturday. He knew how to control himself better than I did. We stopped at the cafe for a buffet breakfast and some much-needed coffee. While we were eating, I learned the latest news about the situation with my ex-wife. Her car was returned to the store. It looks like Cameron was more than willing to pay for Linda, but the checks weren't worth anything. She didn't even know about it until they came and picked her up. Apparently, he took care of everything else in the same way. I don't know how long he expected to get away with it, but he must have beaten a lot of people at snooker before he got caught. Grace told Linda that she could stay a week, and 1 week only. Linda had no idea where she was going to go or what she was going to do. What little money she had when she left me seems to have disappeared too. Maria was fast asleep in bed by this time, but Armand and Martin were ready and willing to try their hand at the Liberty Keys golf course. Maria was up when we got home and gave us a good lecture about how it's not good to have fun without her. We ordered pizza and got a pay-per-view movie. Yes, life was good. On Sunday morning, Maria and I had a nice brunch at a local club. I was hoping to show it off to Linda and Cameron, but they never showed up. There were a few looks our way, and I noticed a few comments, but overall it was great. This was the first of many branches to come. Linda moved out of Billy and Grace's house before the end of the week into a small furnished apartment. Grace and Linda kept in touch, but they were not as close as before, even though they were sisters. Robert and Glenn came home for our wedding 3 months later. They made fun of me because I had to go out and find 2 new guys to replace them. The 4 guys found a common language, and this made Maria and I happy. Robert and Glenn never mentioned Linda. I didn't intentionally avoid talking about her, but the topic just never seemed to come up. I don't know if they came to see her before going back to school or not. Billy was my best man, but he was more of a witness than anything else since it was just a civil ceremony. Maria stopped working before the wedding. I insisted that Armand and Martin also quit so that they could concentrate on their studies. None of them complained. Although I didn't make any money selling my old house, I was still able to buy a new one without any problems. 2 months after our wedding, Maria and I were Christmas shopping at the store when we saw Linda. She worked at the customer service counter at the front of the store, wearing a uniform of khaki pants and a red shirt. She seemed to have lost weight. She looked up and noticed that Maria and I were looking in her direction. We watched as she turned and walked into the office behind the counter. It was not our intention to embarrass her. She had already suffered enough. Maria and I left the store and have been shopping elsewhere since then. Cameron Wright simply disappeared. After he was arrested and charged, he was simply taken away and we never heard from him again. Robert and Glenn came home for Christmas to their new home. The big holiday surprise was Linda's arrival. Maria invited her without telling me. An awkward situation arose for a few moments. At first I was annoyed, but then I realized that this was a very noble and courageous step on Mary's part. Confrontation was necessary for all of us to come to closure. I never forgave Linda for what she did, but just knowing that she was aware of what she had lost made the situation better. Subscribe to